Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. Sunday, the 15th of March 2015. Just getting ready to record The Outsiders. First Dog on the Moon will follow in a separate broadcast.
Time now for Outsiders. I'm Barry Cassidy, and you're not. So true. This morning's Outsiders are Stephen Brooke, life editor at The Australian, Dr. Jennifer Oriel, political scientist, political analyst, public commentator, and Van Badham, a Guardian Australia columnist, writer, and activist. And these were probably the words of the week.
It's the job of the taxpayer to provide reasonable services in a reasonable way, to provide high quality services in a reasonable way. What we can't do is endlessly subsidise lifestyle choices if those lifestyle choices are not conducive to the kind of full participation in Australian society that everyone should have. If you want to close the gap, what you've got to do is get the kids to school, the adults to work, and you've got to ensure that communities are safe.
Van Badham, just clutching her head in her hands, will give her a moment to compose herself. Jennifer Oriel, apart from the substance there, we have here for this government another week, another distraction, another week in which its capacity to message has been substantially undermined.
Yeah, look, the more I study Abbott, I mean, we've all been studying him very closely during the past few months. There seems to be a very consistent pattern in the moments when he fails spectacularly in delivering the message. And that is when he's traversing the line between being a political leader and the chief policymaker of the nation. Mm-hmm. In every single circumstance that he has made, well, it's ranged from gaffes to deeply insulting comments at times. It has been when he has been trying to negotiate, and that's another example of it, the lifestyle choice comment.
Which is a trick in politics that requires a fair degree of dexterity to talk to the people and to talk to your base simultaneously.
It's exceptionally rare. I mean, Rudd did policy wonk very well, but
not so good on the base, as it turned out.
That's right.
Van, what's your thought there?
It's. I've started using this term called an Abbott-Cascade, and the Abbott-Cascade to me is when the Prime Minister says he's made a mistake. The lifestyle choice comment is just unbelievable, and it is speaking to a base. I think we all know that.
So it's not a mistake, is it? It's
well, I mean,
intended signal.
do you know, I think there's an intended signal, but you actually, when you want to win an election, you need more than your base. You actually need to win over the undecideds in the middle. And I think what we're seeing from Abbott is a series of miscalculations about how much that middle is actually on his side. And the Abbott-Cascade is when he said something so ridiculous and offensive that has alienated people within that undecided middle, that you then have the strange onion incident, you have the bizarre St. Patrick's Day message, you have this sort of cascade of embarrassing, distracting political behaviour to the point where you don't actually know what the original insult was anymore because so many are coming so quickly, they sort of get lost in the cascade.
Of course, the onion thing is something we've seen before.
I'm going to grab an apple.
You know, George, that's an onion.
Yes, it is.
He couldn't tell an apple from an onion, and he's your eyewitness.
George Costanza there, Stephen Brooke, famously munching on an onion, which is, yes.
Who knew Abbott was a Seinfeld fan? I didn't.
I didn't pick it. Oh.
But it's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if this is a calculated gaffe, because he's clearly there's the theory that he's trying to appeal to the base and this will help him.
Is this Onion Gate we're referring to here?
No, well, no, I was sorry, I was back on
Lifestyle Choices Gate.
Lifestyle Choices.
See what I mean? Abbott-Cascade.
Onion Gate is a bit of vaudeville, isn't it? I mean, he wants to be the tough guy, and what is a tougher demonstration than eating an onion? In a way, I think all these are sideshows. The two things that really matter haven't happened yet, which is the New South Wales state election and the budget.
Yep.
And depending on which way both of those key incidences go, all these missteps and stumbles and outrages and arguments over the past couple of weeks will be quickly forgotten.
But isn't sideshow the problem? I mean, Jennifer, Stephen mentions there two big things: budget, New South Wales election. Let's assume that the New South Wales election looks after itself, and that's a reasonably fair assumption, I guess, although...
I don't know, the West is marking up.
But the budget is another thing altogether, and here we are, Parliament back again tomorrow. We're just a couple of weeks sitting now away from the hiatus before the budget. This is getting, timing-wise, fairly critical. You would hope that your government right now would be, given the messages they're trying to give us with the intergenerational report and all of that, really focused, and yet...
Yeah, and I think, again, this is that awkwardness on that line, negotiating those two roles, because what, in that interview, what he should have been doing was becoming an educator. And that's really the nature of the space between those two. You switch into teacher or education mode. He could have been telling people about Noel Pearson's fantastic education programs, which he has supported since their inception.
And yet he ends up with Noel Pearson telling him he's an idiot.
He ends up with lifestyle choice. So it's these, I think what's frustrating as someone who, I mean, I appreciate Abbott sometimes, and I think what's frustrating for everyone, and certainly from my perspective, is that he's missing the crucial message that he needs to be delivering at this point. So those gaffes end up, being an ultimate distraction, as you've said, from what really needs to be sold here.
Stephen, I thought that crucial message was a really important one, and he actually did say it, and he said it in that clip, but everyone's ignored it, is that I'm here to close the gap. And Tony Abbott, to be fair to him, has put in the hard yards. He's visited the communities. He has spent a lot of time on this policy area. He is our Aboriginal Affairs Minister. He says, I want to close the gap, but you know what? It is really difficult, if not impossible, to close the gap because of these really isolated communities. And this is a really big problem. Let's talk about it.
And yet there's an argument there about whether those isolated communities are, in fact, among the healthiest places. You know, that's not the essence of the issue. But, I mean, even so, as you say, Stephen, he removed the capacity to have that conversation by perhaps phrasing it clumsily.
Yeah, everyone leapt on the two words and ignored his broader message. And, I mean, in some ways, he alienated his own base of Aboriginal affairs experts and people who had previously been quite supportive of him.
Van, is Andrew Bolt right here? Is this just a hate campaign against Abbott? The quote from Andrew, this is not reporting, this is witch hunting.
Van, I want to hear you saying that Andrew Bolt is right. I'm sorry, but I'm happy to put it out there. It's Aboriginal land. Like, these are the First Nations people of this continent. They have a right to be on their land. They've been systematically disenfranchised by a colonial invasion, and we are living in the repercussions of a genocide. You cannot turn around to one of the most enduring collection of cultures, because of the diversity of Aboriginal cultures, and say, your existence on your land that we have spent over 200 years trying to seize from you is a lifestyle choice.
But
and that is
answering the question, though, is Andrew Bolt right? Are we conducting a witch hunt against Tony Abbott? Is everything he says being picked on unreasonably?
He's the Prime Minister of this country. He's the most privileged person within our entire political system. He is the person who theoretically leads the direction of the entire nation. If he's not relentlessly held to account, what kind of future is there for any of us? And what this raises is a basic competency question. Whether you're on the left or on the right, and, you know, many people are on the right, and it's a beautiful, flowering miracle of a democracy, we have to ask questions about who is in charge and what is their capacity to actually lead. And I think this is why everybody is finding these comments so alarming, because even if you are a supporter of Tony Abbott, if you are a Conservative, even if you are entirely invested in the ideology, the government and the leadership of the Prime Minister is not being run effectively, efficiently or well.
What do you
and
think
I think
about
that raises questions for everyone.
Jennifer, that competency issue, are we getting to that point where we're just not seeing them doing the job?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I think the Abbott government is very successful on national security, it's been very successful on foreign policy, it's been very successful on secure borders, and there have been niche successes in education policy as well. So I wouldn't say that he has lost the substance or he's not able to steer the ship. But I do think that he needs to learn again how to occupy that space between political leader and chief policymaker and educate the public, and be very, take some time to avoid using those sorts of misplaced idioms.
And Stephen Brooke, as Parliament sits again this week, what do you think just finally we might see from the PM? Will we see that same sort of chest puffed sort of machismo with sort of the last sitting week? Will we see a focus on the serious issues, do you think? How will he play it?
Well, it's events, isn't it? And I think, possibly something might happen in Indonesia that totally resets everything. And, if those two men, part of the Bali Nine, are executed, then I think that could completely recast the whole political scenario, and people will be turning to Abbott in the hope that the messages that he sends out that week in regards to that issue are something that all of Australia can get behind and be proud of. I think Bolt is kind of half right. Amongst certain segments of people, it's a bit of an Abbott witch hunt, and anything he does they're going to take issue with. The danger for Abbott is if, as happened with Julia Gillard, that gets larger and larger and larger, consumes more and more of the electorate, so that in the end people are not listening to him no matter what he does.
Yes, well,
I don't think it's at that stage yet. I think that it's still there for him to sort of, play with and try and bring
but
that
as you
back.
say, events this week could well take us in sober directions. Look, thanks to our outsiders this morning. An interesting point on which to end. Stephen Brooke.
Okay, I'll start a new movie now for First Moondog.